Hey,
Now we're
what's going
starting.
on, Mike? How's it
Hey,
going, man?
doing well. How about you?
Good, man. Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday.
Happy.
We're doing it on a Tuesday. We're so used to doing Mondays, but
Right.
I had a little fun trip yesterday. So
Yeah, looks like you were enjoying yourself down in Bourbon Country.
I actually I got to fly into Kentucky for to be part of a barrel pick for Kentucky Bourbon Fest, which I know I shared on previous casts, but Kentucky Bourbon Fest, huge festival in Kentucky, September 13th through the 15th. Tickets already on sale. If people want to go and you need a referral code for tickets, definitely DM me at the Dram Daddy right there in the corner right there. That's my IG and Twitter, and I can send a referral code. But um, yeah, I actually got asked to be part of a barrel pick team for Knob Creek at the Jim Beam Distillery. I can't even say it. Um, James Beam. So I got to fly in basically yesterday. It was a quick turnaround, and we were talking pregame right now. But I basically flew out at 8:45 a.m. and I landed at about 11 Louisville time, which is Eastern time, so it's an hour ahead. But so quick, hour flight basically, and
Right.
got picked up, went straight to the distillery, had some lunch, had some cocktails, a little bit of some palate cleansers right before we went and did the tour. So I got to tour the actual distillery, which was a lot of fun, and we got to see some really cool things for people who are
Nice.
familiar with the bourbon making process. Um, barrels are loaded in
What's
rick
up,
house.
Dave? It's my buddy Dave, who he runs a Yankees stream. Sorry to cut you off in the middle of that, but
Yeah,
check them out if you're inclined in that.
yeah. So
Did you get bologna anything? He's asking.
I didn't. I'm sorry. I only had room for my old Fitz 13 that I picked up at Heaven Hill. So I actually, it's funny because I grabbed like a bag before I left, and I'm like, I'm just gonna bring a carry-on just in case I find something, because you can't bring it onto the plane. You gotta put it in your carry-on. So and check in the bag. So I did that, but anyway, we went to some of the rick houses, got to go on to a certain part of the tour that not necessarily always open to the public or whatever, but checked out some
Nice.
different areas in the on the grounds and everything. Went to the barrel pick, went through 4 different barrels, a ton of fun. I'm actually going to share a quick video. This is on my Instagram, so if you follow me at the Dram Daddy on Instagram, I just posted this, but fun little reel I made of like my quick turnaround trip. I mean, this is all basically footage that I collected within a day, and just kind of threw together. So I'll play it for you. Yeah, so
That's
a little bit
awesome.
day in the life of the Dram Daddy, aka Drammy Sosa, right? It was
Absolutely.
again super cool experience. I got asked basically about 3 weeks ago. I got reached out to, and the Whiskey Godmother, who was in the video that I kind of prefaced. She reached out, asked me if I wanted to be part of a picking team for Kentucky Bourbon Fest. So basically, the pick that we did is going to be bottled and sold at Kentucky Bourbon Fest in September.
Oh, that's awesome. Nice.
So really cool to say I was part of that experience. Highlight it. My reel just got shared by Visit Bardstown, which is Bardstown is a city in
Wow.
Kentucky. So they
Yeah,
just
I've
reshared
heard of
my
that. Yep.
reel because it tourism.
Right.
So really cool. It was really interesting couple days I've had, to say the least. But again, super fun. And if
If you
anybody
think
who
about it,
follows
though,
me,
a little bit of false advertising on their part, because you probably got a better experience of everything than what the people they're reaching out to. So, but obviously, the going for the bourbon alone is worth it.
Honestly, just going to some of those distilleries, and James Beam is a legacy distillery. I mean, it's been they've been around since the 1800s, and there's so much history there. I mean, they have like I want to say it's 8 generations of master distillers through their family. And fun fact, James Beam Distilling Company was not even actually founded by Jim Beam.
Really?
It was Jacob Beam. Jim Beam
Wow.
was the 4th-generation master distiller that really took the distillery out of some of the hardships that it faced. I mean, he went through the Great Depression, he went through Prohibition, like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong during that time, and was able to keep that distillery going. So it was just amazing history that's involved. And I mean, to be kind of on those grounds and see like some of the buildings when they were kind of creating, they used like old railroad parts, back in the day because they couldn't get supplies to build, and that's what they used. So there's so much history there that it just made it such a great experience. So, definitely go follow me. If you're into whiskey and you want to have a good time, Kentucky Bourbon Fest is the place to be. It's a weekend long of just basically tasting whiskey, hanging out with some really amazing people, meeting master distillers and blenders, and just having a great time. So yeah, hit me up. I could definitely share some info.
For sure.
But it led me to this, and I know he talked about it. So let's talk a little bit about airport decorum, because I've had this conversation with a few people. When you have a flight, how early are you getting to the airport? Are you like are you in dad mode, like full dad mode, where you're like there 3-4 hours early? Are you cutting it? Like, are you sweating your ass off running to the gate? Like, what's your take on this?
Like standard, like domestic flight, I just go, I'd say 2 hours, maybe 1.5 hours if it's like not, super busy time that I'm getting a flight at. But
so like leaving 2 hours early, or are you there 2 hours early?
I'd say I'm there 2 hours early, especially if it's like early morning or late night, like, kind of peak times for flying. Maybe go hour and a half if it's like middle of the day. I will say the last time that I flew out of O'Hare was like over a year ago, and I wound up like the day before I was getting everything ready, and I couldn't find my wallet for the life of me, and I was scrambling to try and find it. We wound up getting there maybe like an hour before we were about to board, so that was like the closest I've ever really cut it. But luckily, it wasn't too much of a sweat getting through TSA that time. What about you?
So I have a really funny take on it. And, to be completely honest with you, I travel for work. So I think I kind of I cheat a little because, so this answer is going to be kind of skewed. I
feel that, Dave. Yep. Got to add extra time for the kid.
So if I'm traveling with child, yeah, I would probably have a little bit more time. But if it's just me, if I'm just taking a trip just myself, it really varies because I fly a lot for work. As we kind of talked about, I travel almost every other week for work. I'm in the air. Basically, I live at an airport. So I'd fly between O'Hare and Midway. O'Hare is actually closer to where I'm at. So it actually takes me about 37 minutes on average to get to O'Hare. So I can time
Really?
that.
I thought where you're at is closer to Midway.
It's not. So Midway
maybe just because you're so far out west, then that makes sense. Okay.
I have to take 55. So 55 is usually a shit show between, what is it like between I'd say First Avenue and like Central. It's usually just like
know that area well. That's where I lived when I was like from the time I was born till I was 12.
I grew up not too far from there. So I mean I'm used to it, but it's like I always have to plan it out. So Midway takes me about, I'd say 45 minutes on average. O'Hare is anywhere from 35 to 37, 38 minutes. I also know if I have to park off site, how long it takes to get from, your parking lot to the transit train at O'Hare or the bus to the terminal in Midway.
Right.
I usually know how long it takes to go through TSA. I have TSA pre-check. It's another thing that just helps me just fly through.
There you go. Okay. That's definitely a huge advantage.
Huge advantage, right?
Yeah.
So to be honest, if I'm traveling for work, I'm usually I'm through security about 15 minutes before my flight starts boarding or taking off. I usually
Man.
time it to that point because I know like exactly like I know how long it takes to get to Terminal 5, 3, 2, 1 at O'Hare. Yeah, it is Satan's asshole for sure.
I was going to say it almost in the literal sense because there's that water treatment plant right there too,
Oh.
and it smells like it too. So yeah,
It's very, yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. So I usually, and it's funny because I talk to people about this that I give them anxiety because I cut it so close to getting on the plane.
yeah,
But I will say this, like, I'm a very anxious person to begin with. I actually struggle with anxiety. Like I take medication
at times
sometimes.
same. Yep.
So I'm anxious no matter what. If I'm there 2 or 3 hours early, I'm just as anxious as if I were there 20 minutes early. So my thought process is I might as well get an extra like 30, 40 minutes of sleep. You know what I mean? So
yeah, definitely.
yeah, but it's interesting to hear people because I hear like especially like my age group, it's usually people there and you just said it, they're there 2 hours, at least an hour and a half before the flight starts boarding or taking off, which is God, it's so much time because I just don't want to spend it in an airport.
I mean, I'm just thinking from your perspective though, like, don't you want to get there and maybe hit the airport bar, get a nice bourbon on the rocks before you get on the flight?
Usually I'm going somewhere for work, so I can't really I can't have that luxury.
Okay. Yeah.
Now when I'm flying home, not even then I don't. I'm just ready to get in the air. I'm ready to get in the air and be where I need to be and not spend any time in a crowded airport. I think that's just my thought process.
For sure.
So
yeah. Being at the airport is a very not great experience, no matter where you're at.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's almost just as bad as this, being between Harlem and Sister. That's my equivalent is just being in an airport longer than I have to.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about what we're here for, right? Let's talk about the Cubs. We'll talk about this past week that they had. We both predicted they would go 5-2. They did not.
Not so much. I mean, few things go differently on game 1 and Saturday. Maybe we don't, we did address the pitcher that blew that game, and there's someone else in his role now. There's also going to be someone in the role of the guy who is most responsible for them losing Sunday's game as well. But, I mean, I think I also was maybe a little bit over optimistic with my thinking that they'd take 2 out of 3 from the Diamondbacks, and they did. But I also thought that it was going to be like Alexander Canario really coming up and shining in those spots too, as I mentioned on our last show. And he had some flashes here and there, but he wasn't exactly carrying the offense like I thought he would. But yeah, I mean, 4-3 overall, not the worst, but you'd hope for a little bit better against the Marlins when they came in as like the worst team in the National League.
Yeah, it was definitely a disappointing series, I think, with the Marlins, especially coming off that high from Arizona. And we talked about it. Like we both felt good about that 2 out of 3, series and maybe getting a little bit of revenge and knowing how important those games are this early in the year against a team like Arizona, who went to, surpass the Cubs last year, went to the World Series and basically beat them out by a game to get in. So, we knew that series was important. They came off that high. I was expecting minimum 3 out of 4, and we know we didn't call a sweep because sweeps in baseball are they're so hard.
Especially in 4-game series too.
Yeah.
So freaking
it's tough. It's tough, just because baseball happens, right? So, crazy shit happens in baseball. And, game 1 felt, it was a little frustrating. They finally exploded, got some offense going while that's, game 8-3, I believe was the final.
Yep. Jameson Taillon's return looked actually really damn great. Good. 5 innings, 1-run ball. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was against the Marlins.
Right.
But we look at, that Friday game was just a way to kick off with, again, Taillon coming back from injury. He looked sharp, and even though it was a bad offense, he looked sharp. I mean, he was hitting his spots. He was, moving up and down the plate, side to side, changing speeds, changing pitches.
He was
great.
I think he was perfect through like the first 3 1/3 innings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously that's not anything that, is going to raise an eyebrow through 3 innings, but still, good to see with him. And, hopefully we're getting the same. Okay, Pirates. This is my buddy Andrew, who when I went to Pittsburgh last year, got to be good friends with him. Thanks for joining in, Andrew. Yeah, I mean, Jameson Taillon, probably was on like a limited pitch count in his return. Hopefully he's able to keep this up going forward. He's due to pitch the last game against the Astros in this series, who they're not the greatest of teams this year, but it's also the Astros, and you can't exactly take them lightly at this point.
No, I mean they're beat up.
By the way, Cubs only allowed one base runner, or Jordan Wicks, I should say, only allowed one base runner. Top of the first, Cubs coming to hit right now.
Awesome, yeah, and I mean they're coming against Houston right now, who's got a really battered rotation. I mean they've got basically everybody's on the IL right now from the rotation.
Yeah.
So, but getting back to that Marlins series, we got to see another strong performance, quality start from Imanaga. And that was the second game, right? Because the first game was the blown save.
Right. That was the one Javier Assad started and got in some trouble, allowed one run, didn't make it through 5, but
let me ask you this. Let me ask you this before we kind of keep going about the series and stuff. At what point do you think Craig Counsell is going to let these guys have a longer leash? Because I mean, I know we were going to discuss it, but I mean, these outings where he's pulling pitchers like in the 5th or 6th inning, where it's like, and these guys should be stretched out at this point, after spring training. You'd think he'd let them go at least a little bit longer, right?
To be honest, I'm surprised he's not already doing that with multiple starters out now. I mean, well, at least one starter was out at the time in Steele, and now you're going to have Hendricks on the IL. So maybe, hopefully tonight Jordan Wicks, and going forward, Assad tomorrow and Taillon on Thursday can be stretched out a little bit there. We'll see. I mean, I think maybe it could also be that like once Steele returns, which should be relatively soon, like that'll kind of set the tone for the rest of the rotation. So
it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I think like with that first game, like we were talking about the blown save, that was like, again, and I'm so glad that they fought back in the second game and they came back, for Imanaga. They rallied for the win, because that could have been just a devastating blow to set up game 2. Yeah, because it was a bad loss. I mean, you have that kind of lead going into the 9th inning with, again, just a bad team that you should be able to put away. And Alzolay gives up a 2-run go-ahead home run in the was it the 9th inning or was it the 8th?
It was the 9th. Right? He came in with 2 outs in the 8th inning for the 4-out save, and he got his one guy in the 8th out, but then 9th inning he got the first out. And then gave up a single and then a home run to Brian De La Cruz, and that's what gave the Marlins the lead.
It's been rough for him. I mean, he's given up a lot of home runs. I want to say he's given up 4 or 5 at this point.
Adbert has given up.
I know he has 4 blown saves already, which I think he had 5 all of last year, wasn't it?
Right. Well, I mean, the one thing I was going to ask you, because when you were making your whole point that this is like the same team that it was last year, was closer a big concern for you at all? Because I never viewed it to be that way going into this season. I didn't feel like it was something that the Cubs really needed to address that big, but
100%. It was 100% a concern. And I mean, if we go back to some of these casts, I think it wasn't necessarily specifically the closer role that I was like panicked about. It was the bullpen in general. They don't have, again, my consistent thing is they don't have that fireballer shutdown guy at the back half of the bullpen, to really kind of shut down a game. And we're starting to see it now. And again, like we know that, and I get it, relievers can vary from year to year. We know that they can have up and down years and things like that. But it has already reared its ugly head that this is another Jed Hoyer mosh posh bullpen that he just puts together, just a bunch of dudes, to say, I guess for lack of a better term, just dudes, no names, just dudes, and they try to string it together to get outs, instead of just having Uh-oh. And Cubs score?
Ian Happ with one out got a double, and then Bellinger just hit one out to right field right now. So
All right.
Cubs are up
2-0.
2-0. Yep. Here we go, Belly.
Great. Yeah, so I did have concerns, and it was just more so the fact of the construction of the bullpen and just having the lack of guys that can just shut down a game. They just don't. Even Alzolay, I felt good about, but I wouldn't have been upset had they gone out and, and again, retrospect is 2020. Like if they would have gone out and spent money and got somebody like Hader, who's
for sure
having a bad start to the year already, but still, I mean, I would have felt better moving Alzolay to the 8th inning because now you've got two guys at the back that you would have theoretically hoped to trust, right?
Yes, but at the same time, like if you don't trust Adbert Alzolay to be your closer, I don't see how you would then go and trust him to be your setup man, because it's like almost like it's the same kind of high leverage outs he'd be expecting to get. Like to me,
for sure. But I think like you're doubling up at that point.
Yeah.
Right? You got two guys in the back that you can trust versus one, and then now you can't even trust him.
You're not wrong, but at the same time, like the games that they have blown because of their bullpen, like the only one I could think of where they relinquished the lead in the 8th inning was the game that I was shirtless for out in the bleachers, but they wound up winning against Colorado. And, as it was Hector Neris that blew it then, but also Hector Neris that came in to get the save in game 2 on Saturday night. He has the most closing experience. And I talked with one of my Philly fan friends, shout out Mark in Philly, who him and I are both big into like Barstool, and I met him through that. He had told me like Neris's best use had always been as a setup man, but at the same time hasn't exactly played out that way this season. Yeah. Who knows, maybe. Yep. Andrew, yes, exactly. Drink. I mentioned that.
So let me ask you this, because I mean, we're talking about the closer now, and we can talk about the rest of the series. But now that we're kind of talking about that blown loss, like we know that Craig Counsell will not have a designated guy. It's just not his MO to have a guy that he would give a title and say, you're the closer. I think he came out in an interview recently and said as much. So
maybe like early during his time in Milwaukee, he shuffled through a couple different guys, because it was like, who's the guy who got hurt for them? Corey something.
Oh yeah.
I forget his last name.
Corey. It started with a K, I think. Right? Was it
Knable? Corey Knable. Yep.
Yeah.
But I mean, later during his time there, I mean, Devin Williams, when he was healthy and not punching walls, he had been a pretty good closer. Yep. Thank you, Dave. I don't know, but maybe not right now. It's not a priority to figure out who exactly the closer is. I think most games it will wind up being Neris, or if he stays up, I think Luke Little could find his way into that too, because I think he has the best stuff of any reliever in the bullpen right now, other than Alzolay. Yeah. So,
which is weird because they sent him down and then immediately recalled him.
Yeah, man. I hope they're giving him like a company iPass for all those times down I-88. Yeah.
What about Keegan Thompson? How do you feel about Keegan Thompson in those late innings? He's been pitching pretty well to start off this year in the bullpen and relief. So
the thing is, though, I don't want to like only have him be designated for one specific inning, because Keegan does have the stamina to go like 2-3 innings if you really need him to. He's got that starting experience. So
yeah. I mean, he could be your 8th and 9th guy then.
If you want to do that, sure. I don't know. I would like to use Keegan in like scenarios where they're up, 3 or 4, maybe a little bit more runs, where like you could pull a starter after say 5 if they're up a decent amount, and kind of preserve the rest of the bullpen, the higher leverage guys. I've heard it floated out that like, this is a guy who's probably been the best reliever on the Cubs so far this year, Mark Leiter Jr. But then again, like he's a guy that I would like to try and save as much as I could to bring in to face lefties because of how much of a reverse split guy he is. Shout out Mark Leiter Jr., by the way, because he's a guy that I think when we did our season preview, he was a guy that I had cut from this team, and
I did not,
turned
but
out to
I know
be
you
very
did.
valuable. Right.
And I think like down the stretch last year, I mean, he was used a lot, and I think like most relievers in that bullpen, they definitely, they start to feel that fatigue, and, already we're starting to see, man, some really heavy early bullpen usage, starters not really going super late. Good to see Dansby Swanson just hit a single. We've got runners at first and third.
There we go.
So Swanson singles. Morel, who previously walked, is now at third. So first and third, and only
nice.
1 out?
2 outs.
1 out. 2 outs. Sorry.
Nope. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, Keegan Thompson could be interesting, because I think back, and he doesn't have the crazy velocity, but I think he's got a good amount of velocity, and he's got enough pitches to mix it up. I think through like some of these like failed starters, right, that like find a career as a closer because they're more than just a 2-pitch artist. They're more than just like a slider and a fastball. They have different, different arm angles or, different pitches or, so I think that could be an interesting guy to just keep your eye on. I don't know if it's the long-term answer, but I think for right now, as we're kind of talking by committee, could be an interesting dude, man.
I wouldn't mind Keegan Thompson. I just, like I said, I would much prefer him to be used for multiple innings if he could, and I think he'd slightly be more valuable there.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
the name of our show is New Guys Shine, Old Guys Fade. So tell me who shined for you over the last week, in terms of the new guys. Like, who's somebody that stood out to you or has continued to stand out for you?
Well, I mean, right off the bat in the DBacks series, Ben Brown, my God, like 6 shutout innings there. Then he comes out of the bullpen in game 2 of the doubleheader against the Marlins. The guy's doing it all for us right now. And I hope that the fact that he was used out of the bullpen isn't some sort of indication that he is going to be like,
it's 5-0.
One of the
Mike Talkman with the
Palatine Mike. I'm actually just down the road from where he grew up at. So hell yeah, let's go.
Run shot. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to break your thought, but
no, you're fine. Listen, Ryan, if you're still with us right now, you might want to double down on Astros money line right now. You can get the better value. Oh yeah, and former Yankee, my guy Dave. I know you got some love for him there. So, I mean, Ben Brown definitely, Canario did shine. He had a home run in the doubleheader. I don't know if you would call him a new guy, but like we said, like we talked about with Jameson Taillon, looked pretty good. Patrick Wisdom, fan favorite of ours, not exactly, but provided the only offense in the doubleheader. So maybe not so much new guys, but newcomers to this year's Cubs team, I think, really shine this week. But I hope, like I was saying before the Talkman home run there, I hope that this isn't a sign that Ben Brown is about to be taken out of the rotation, because he's looked amazing as a starter so far. But at the same time, I think he's probably going to be on an innings limit this year.
Yeah.
So maybe they feel that this is the more effective way to use him.
For sure. And I think it's such a good point, because, I think we saw it with, Justin Steele, his first year or so, and I get them wanting to protect these guys, but man, I feel like Ben Brown is that dude that he's probably got some of the best stuff in that rotation when he's in it.
Absolutely.
I mean, 97 mile per hour fastball, off speed stuff is nasty. It's filthy. He's got a ton of spin. I mean, we talk about spin rate a lot, but I mean, he's got some nasty stuff, and that's the dude that I really want to see stretched out a little bit more. But I mean, you're probably right. I mean, he's probably going to be on an innings limit just because he's he's a young guy. But
well, I do think there is a way that whenever Kyle Hendricks' back problems ease up, hint, hint, nod, nod. When he returns, I do think there's a way that can. Those two ways can kind of play into each other. I think that I think the best way to go with Hendricks now is, if you look at what he's done over his last 2 starts, it's been the second and third time through the order that he's really gotten hit hard. He looked fine against the Marlins. He did give up a home run early in the second inning, but that was the only hit he allowed his first time through the lineup. If you piggyback Hendricks with Ben Brown, have Hendricks go like the first time through the lineup, however long that may take, 1 or 2 innings maybe, and then go Ben Brown for the next 4 or 5 innings. I mean, if he's on an innings limit anyways, that could be a way to get him, the most that could get him, the most amount of appearances, I think.
I hate to say it, and I think we can touch base on this here, but if that's how you're utilizing Kyle Hendricks when he returns, it is a complete waste of roster spot, in my opinion. And it's hard for me to say that because he's the last man standing from the 2016 World Series champions. But if he is being used as an opener, that to me is a complete waste of roster spot. When you've got guys like Ben Brown that I would rather give the innings to that, and maybe even split with it, Cade Horton, if you're going to put them on innings limits and just see what these young guys could do. Because at this point, it's just you're not tied to Hendricks much farther than this year. And at that point, I think you give him a handshake. You say, thank you for all your service. We appreciate everything you've done for us. But to me, that's the odd guy out at this point, and I know we talked about like these April starts where he traditionally gets off to a really slow start. But I wanted to throw this up because looking at his April numbers in the past, they're not this. I mean, he's 0-3 to start. And again, we're not going to hang everything on wins and losses. We know that, but negative 1.1 WAR, a 12 ERA. And if you want to blame the defense, like we talked about, fine. He maybe had some defensive plays that could have helped him, but his FIP is still at 775. So even with defensive help, not great, man. 2.1
well,
whip, 8 home runs,
run him down.
21 innings pitched, only 16 strikeouts and 7 walks. That number sticks out to me too, is the walks. He's not somebody who traditionally walks a lot of guys. And, I think he's just looked, he's missed his spots badly. And the thing is, when you have a guy like Kyle Hendricks that doesn't depend on velocity and can't depend on that kind of the side of pitching, he can't afford to make mistakes with his control. He's got to hit his spots, because if he's not, his stuff is basically looks like softballs up there. And lo and behold, we've seen it.
I guess I just think that the way that you prolong Ben Brown's innings limit coming up is that could be a way to do it. And yeah,
at what expense though?
At what expense? Just you would have him longer in, you'd have him on the active roster for longer.
Yeah, but you're also, you're going to be fighting back from 5 runs down after 3 innings right away every game.
But I don't think. But again, it's not been until the second time through the lineup that Hendricks has really gotten hit hard so far this year. Looking at his numbers right now, first inning our ERA has been 3.60, but that's 2 earned runs allowed in 5 first innings worth of starts. If you can get through that first inning and only be down, 1 or 2 runs, he hasn't gotten you into super trouble early. And again, you know what? Those 2 runs, actually, they were at the game we were at when freaking Ian Happ dropped the ball, so shouldn't count, okay? My point is, I think it could work. But time will tell.
You know what, Mike? We love you as the optimist. I love your positive spin on all of it. It definitely.
Listen, as my guy Cody Delmendo from CHGO, who I hung out with on Friday, would often say, "Don't let facts get in the way of a good story." Okay.
That's fair. I just can't live in delusion.
I got it.
I'm more of a. I told you, I'm a realist, man. I'm looking at it,
I
cold
get
hard
it.
facts. The guy looks.
I get it. And ideally, right now, the Cubs rotation would not include Kyle Hendricks, even if he was still active. Ideally, if Ben Brown wasn't on an innings limit, the rotation would be, when fully healthy, Steele, Imanaga, Assad, Wicks, and then
Brown.
And
you would put Assad in the bullpen?
No, Assad would be in there, but I think I listed him third, but throw him fifth.
Because let's say it again. You'd have Steele, Imanaga, Tyon.
Oh shoot, I forgot about Tyon.
Yeah.
Steele, Imanaga, Tyon. Well, okay, Tyon. You'd probably
who's the odd man out?
Ooh, yeah.
Between the three, you'd have to pick Ben Brown, Assad, or
the thing. Jordan Wicks has looked good so far tonight. Hopefully it all pans out, but he is the one guy with options you could send down to Iowa if you needed to. So maybe just by default, that would be the guy. And, we've sang Javier Assad's praises last episode. As of his last start, by the way, minimum 100 innings pitched. He has the best ERA in the National League of any pitcher since July 1st of last year.
I love this comment because it exemplifies you to a T. Always the optimist.
Hey, listen here, Andrew. The one game we were at in Pittsburgh last year, he shoved it up your guy's ass, okay?
I agree with Alex here. Steele, Tyon, Imanaga, breaking up the lefties, I think is the right thing to do. You've got Assad, I think, has proven that he should be in the rotation and continue even, through some of the starts where he's only gone to maybe about 4 innings or so. I think you got to give him a shot to go deeper, work out of that some of that trouble. And then I think Wicks, going back to Wicks from a lefty, I think you have that nice lefty, righty, lefty. And then Brown coming out of the bullpen is a swing guy or a 6th starter. I think that's where you can maybe leverage some of those innings, but I don't see where Hendricks fits after this.
I'll have to look and see if Council has ever done like a 6-man rotation like that in Milwaukee. I mean, he's cycled through a lot of guys in his time up there, but that was also with much limited resources compared to what he has here. Former Cub Marcus Stroman struggling. Hey, the A's are actually not as terrible as I thought they would be this year.
Yeah.
They're not the worst team in the American League, unlike some teams in this town. Hint, hint.
Ooh, that's been brutal. That's been hard to watch.
Yeah.
All right. So you think that, again, just to kind of recap this, you want to see Hendricks back on this team?
It's not that I want it. I think that's just the most realistic thing that's going to happen at this point. I mean, I didn't think there was any possibility of him getting DFA'd like after, his most recent performance. It was always going to be this where he'd get put on the IL.
A ghost injury.
Yeah. I think that once he returns, you're definitely going to have 6 starting options that will be better than him. Shut up, Alex. I have a podcast and you don't, motherfucker. 2 of them, actually.
Yeah, I was. Oh man.
Well, you're going to have, like Alex did mention previously, we will have 6 starting options better than Kyle Hendricks at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I say this because I don't think it's realistic to think that like the Cubs would DFA him and have to cut him the check for what they're going to be owed, what he's going to be owed for the rest of this year. Tom Ricketts did release Jason Hayward. He did let go of Eric Hosmer and Tucker Barnhart and Trey Mancini last season. I don't know if he's going to fight that happening for a 3rd year in a row.
Yeah.
But then again, you know what? Maybe he doesn't exactly pin it on Hoyer because the extension given to Hendricks was a Theo move. So we'll see.
It's a lot of interesting moves too. I think the one I was kind of surprised by, like with the whole Hendricks going on the IL thing, recalling Luke Little, recalling Wisniewski got recalled again. DFAing Garrett Cooper felt kind of odd to me because I don't necessarily think like he was having a bad start to the year.
He wasn't.
270.
He wasn't. But the thing is, he was also very like I'm getting the feeling that had he not, or had Patrick Wisdom started the year healthy and not been on the injured list, that he probably would have made the team over Garrett Cooper, as evidenced by the fact that he's when he didn't exactly have to be. So that kind of made Garrett Cooper a little redundant at this point. I mean, Patrick Wisdom, probably not as good of a hitter as Garrett Cooper, has some more power, can play multiple positions, none of them all that well. But Garrett Cooper, your only option to play him is a first base or DH, really.
But you know what? I don't necessarily know if it's like a thing that has to do with Patrick Wisdom, because they just called up Mash Mervis again, you know, where they could have kept him. So is that maybe, do they feel like, okay, you know, Mervis has figured it out. He's ready to be called up. He's ready to stick this time, because they felt comfortable DFAing Cooper and calling this guy up. I mean, it's just, it's interesting.
It could just be a matter of they wanted another lefty bat instead of a righty bat in Cooper, you know, because Cooper, his numbers were fine, but he also hadn't played all that much, just for the simple fact that, like, he was, God, Alex, shut up. Yes, Kyle Hendricks is freaking redundant at this point, or is he really? I don't know. You know, your options are limited with Garrett Cooper, is what I'm trying to say. Like, you know, he only really ever got starts against lefties. He only came up to lefties. He, you know, can only be played either at first base or at DH. You know, I feel bad for him because I did like what he did. You know, he had a big game against the Rockies. He came up with a big hit in the second game of the doubleheader to give the Cubs some insurance and help me cash -1.5 that night. Thank you very much for that, Garrett Cooper. But he, you know, the options were limited with him. And I hope he lands on his feet somewhere, preferably not in the NL Central. But, you know, best of luck to Garrett Cooper. We appreciate what you did here.
Yeah. Well, you know, he's not going to Milwaukee. You know, they already got a first baseman with Hoskins. Right. He's not going to go to St. Louis. They've got Goldschmidt. So
true.
Yeah. Pittsburgh need a first baseman.
Unless they wind up trading Goldschmidt midway through this season, because I think this is the last year on his contract. And, you know, much to the joy of many of us here in Chicago, the Cardinals are not a good team.
Yeah, they have not got off to a good start at all. So which is great. Love it.
Yep.
Was just in St. Louis.
Nice.
Probably
end up in Boston, maybe.
So before we do player A, player B, is there anything else that you wanted to discuss or kind of highlight from the previous series, two series?
I would just say that I'm not going to panic about what they only getting a split against the Marlins when 100%. We have moved. You know, one of those games was 2 outs away from being won had Alzolay been able to shut it down, and now he's out of the closer role. You know, and I'm not saying like whatever decision Craig goes with tonight, if it does wind up being a situation, is the right decision, but we know that it's not going to be blown in the same fashion if it does get blown. So, I mean, going forward, I'm not discouraged by the fact that the Cubs only took 2 out of 4 from the Marlins.
Yeah, I mean, you hate to see those losses. I think it's still early enough in the year that you can move past them. You can work through it. You know, right now you got 2 guys on base right now. Ian Happ just walked after Amaya.
Damn, you're ahead of me.
So 2 walks in the inning. So nice. Guys on first and second.
Pitch count. John Maley with that hitting philosophy. Love to see it. There you go,
man. So, you know, I don't think it's necessarily, it's definitely not a panic moment. I would have hoped that they would have taken 3 out of 4 from a really bad team. But, you know, we talked about baseball happens, you know, so hopefully they come back this series. You know, we'll talk about our predictions for this week, but hopefully they continue, you know, the trend they're on right now. They're up 5-0 against the Astros that are beaten up with injuries. So you got to take advantage of these situations and got to keep winning series. That's it. You know, and the good thing is I think we started seeing Milwaukee and Pittsburgh really came back down to earth again, like we all thought they would. But
well, they're playing each other, so someone's got to win those games, sadly.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to see the effort going today, like them scoring, you know, a bunch of runs early, because so far, the only game where that's really been the case for the Cubs this year has been, the game against the Dodgers on Sunday that Shota started, that he had to be pulled early. But hopefully this provides enough of a cushion for Jordan Wicks where he can make it through 6-7 innings tonight without much effort.
Let's hope. I mean, he's been beaten up in some of these later innings as he's gone. So hopefully he can keep it together and finish strong here. And, he's already gone 3 innings, 1 hit baseball, or I should say 2 innings, 1 hit baseball, 2 strikeouts. So if he could give us a solid 6 2/3 tonight, I'm going to be happy.
I would be thrilled with that.
All right, let's do, we haven't done it this year, right?
Yeah.
I don't think we've done it this year, right? We've neglected
this was
it a little bit.
A staple of our shows last year that we have neglected to do, but bringing it back, player A versus player B. I provided the stats for this one. John is going to have to guess. First set of players for those is going to be 2 current players, what they've done currently this season. Second set of players will be the career stats of either a retired player or a player who is still active but has had a fairly long career that's comparable to, to the other players. So let's get us started here. So we have current player A, currently hitting .289 with a .350 on base, .578 slugging, 928 OPS, 6 homers, 15 RBI, 16 runs scored, 11 extra base hits, 7 walks, 26 strikeouts, a weighted run created plus of 168, and a 1.4 Fangraphs WAR. Then we have player B, as John pulls it up, who's currently hitting .309 with a .385 OBP, 618 slugging, a 1,002 OPS, 6 homers, 15 RBIs, just like the other guy, 11 runs scored, 9 extra base hits, 9 walks, 22 strikeouts, a 4 weighted runs created plus, and just .9 Fangraphs WAR. So who would you choose between those two, John?
Man, this is close. And wow, it's this early in the year to have 6 home runs already.
Mm-hmm.
Through April. Pretty good start. 15 ribbies apiece. Let's see. 16 runs scored versus 11. So they're both getting on base at a high clip.
Yep.
Both slugging well. OPS is, man, I am going to go with, it's interesting because I'm looking at the Fangraph WARs here at 1.4 here, and this is only 0.9. So I'm assuming that this person is probably not as strong defensively as player A because the WAR is a bit down, considering they have a higher on base, higher slugging, higher OPS.
Right.
All the extra base hits are the same. I mean, they're walking more, they're striking out less. Man, I feel like you're setting me up here, but I'm going to go with player B.
Okay. I don't think there's really a wrong choice between this, but the player that you did pick is a current Chicago Cub. That would be Michael Busch, who's currently the NL Rookie of the Year frontrunner, according to the betting odds. Player A is last year's AL Rookie of the Year, Gunnar Henderson of the Baltimore Orioles.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And he's off to a nice start himself as well.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I feel good about that. I mean, that's really, for Michael Busch, I know we talked about it previously. I mean, what's really been impressive about him, it's not even just the power numbers, it's the walks, man, the on base. Like he works counts for and granted, he's an older rookie. He's 26, right? Right. 26-year-old rookie. So he's an 26. Older rookie. But to come up in the big leagues and actually work counts the way that he has been really impressive. And again, I don't know if it's sustainable. I hope it is. I hope this is who he is as a hitter. And I think that's kind of what we hoped for and expected. But so far, I mean, he's off to a really great start. And
he'll tell you what, Andrew, in 2 weeks when the Cubs go to PNC, he's taking Jared Jones into the Allegheny River, just like Kyle Schwarber. Calling it right here.
And as we just said, Michael Busch grounds out to end the inning. So
whatever. He's got to make out sometime.
Yeah, ball and play though.
Exactly.
All right.
Second set of players. All right. So we have career player A, and this is all their 162 game averages for the So he has a 308 career average, 365 career on base, 472 slugging, 837 OPS. Averages 21 homers per year, 72 RBIs, 199 hits, 63 extra base hits, 54 walks, 103 runs scored, 28 stolen bases, 8 caught stealings, and averages 4.9 baseball reference WAR per season. They didn't really have the averages on Fangraphs, so I went with baseball reference WAR for this one.
All right.
All right. And then player B for his career, average per 162 games. He had a 285 career average, 344 on base, 452 slugging, 795 career OPS, 21 homers, 79 RBI, 179 hits, 57 extra base hits, 57 walks, 99 runs scored, 26 steals, 8 caught stealings, 5.1 B WAR.
Ooh. All right. Man, maybe if some people could give me a little bit of help here. I'm like, this one's really close. And I
chime in on the comments too for those of you guys watching who you think who you would prefer between these two players.
Yeah. So here's player A again, and here's player B. Player A has a higher on base, higher batting average, higher slug, higher OPS, 7 less RBIs, 20 more hits, 6 of those more extra base hits, pretty close in walks, more runs scored. So the bases are the same. I mean, he's got a little bit less than he's got a 4.9 versus a 5.1 WAR. Elizabeth, I'm gonna have to go with you, Elizabeth. I'm gonna go A just because I like the on base, man. This guy's getting on base a ton. He's scoring more runs as a result. I think probably not as strong defensively, slightly less. I would assume because the numbers are so close. 7 less RBIs, but I think we know that RBIs are also an indicator of who's in front of you. I mean, you got to have guys that get on base for you to have RBIs. So. Yeah, I'm gonna go with our friend Elizabeth there and choose player A.
All right. Well, sadly, player A has 8 fewer Gold Gloves than player B does. Player A is playing in this game right now, and that would be Jose Altuve of the Astros. Player B is Ryan Sandberg, who will be getting a statue later this year from the Cubs.
Okay.
Pretty comparable careers for them as far as what they do year to year.
Really close.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, knowing that with the glove, I think, had I known there's 8 Gold Gloves versus
1 goal. No,
one.
Rhino had 9. Altuve has 1.
Yeah, I think that would be an easy. Had I had that bit of information, I'd be like, yeah, I'm taking the defensive player.
Yep.
But impressive for Altuve, though. I mean, especially considering what a little shit that guy is, too. I mean, he's not.
Well, and you also got to consider.
Guy.
You got to consider no one was banging on a trash can for Rhino when he was up. So, imagine if that was the case, how much better he would have hit.
Fair. Fair. All right. Let's jump into our next segment here. Let me pull this down here. All right. We'll jump into one of our closing segments, flying the W's and taking the L's.
Hello. You play to win the game.
Addison is next. Doors open on the left at Addison.
I say one thing. Go. Let's go. That's a W. That's E1. That's E1. That's a W.
Is a L7 winning.
I'm not going to lie. We watch that every single time we do this, and nothing makes me feel more uncomfortable than watching Jameson win.
It is, yeah, especially when he starts licking the tips of his fingers, too.
It is really, I mean, I don't know how his teammates, I mean, I would lose all poor leadership. That's what I'll say. I would lose all respect.
Maybe there's a reason why he's not exactly stuck as a starter on most teams. Why the Bucks felt they had to go out and get Tom Brady and then won a Super Bowl with him. Did you want to kick us off or?
Yeah, I'll do it because I have my flying the W and taking the L are kind of intertwined and they're kind of simple. We kind of talked about it a little bit here, and I know you had some stats that I wanted to pull up. So let me read the stats first to preface like where my flying the W and taking the L is going. So Cubs starting pitchers so far in 2024 have pitched 102 innings, which is the second worst in all of baseball. Cubs relievers are at 94.2 innings pitched, which is the second most in all of baseball. Very clear polar opposites, right? You're going to probably have that effect, and hopefully that evens out and comes down towards the middle, but off to a really auspicious start, to say the least. So I'm going to actually give my W probably to a guy that's probably sitting at home and laughing his ass off a little bit, and that's David Ross, because he was booted from this team because he was replaced by a guy that we thought, and again, it's April. I'm not going to put the cart in front of the horse in front of the cart here, but to say that April has not gone as planned for Craig Counsell, who I would give my L to right now, would be a very minimal thing to say. I mean, Counsell came in being the guru of the bullpen, the guy that develops guys, puts them in the right spots. He's put Alzolay in position several times where he's trying to get 4 or 5 outs, which has proved to be incorrect, as Alzolay has now moved out of the closer role. So I think Rossi's got to be at home just giggling a little bit, you replaced me with this guy who you were saying is going to be better with the bullpen and putting guys in position. And so far, the guys haven't really done of him a lot of favors. And again, he's pulling guys early, like starters early, and taxing the bullpen early on. And we're going to need some innings here. We've got a 15 game stretch with no days off here?
Wow, that's a good question. I actually didn't realize that they have a stretch like that they're in the middle of right now. But
starters go, man.
Gonna be tough for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, Justin Steele will be back eventually, and again, like we referenced, there'd been the thing you have the least control over as a manager is like how well your starting pitcher performs, because at the end of the day, like you have to go get them eventually when they're getting rocked, especially in the case of a guy like Kyle Hendricks. And then, right off the jump, opening day, Justin Steele goes down after only 4 1/3 innings. You had Shota Imanaga have a start get cut short. I don't want to throw it all on Counsell for that, but I do think that there have been times he has given his starters a little bit of a short leash, especially recently. I think like the game on Saturday, he could have allowed Javier Assad to go, a batter more to try and get through 5.
Right.
Fair enough. I'm not a fan of David Ross, very much a fan of Craig Counsell. And I think as, the Cubs get healthier, they'll figure it out better, but fair assessment there.
Okay. Who you got?
I'm going pretty personal with my W's and L's as I try to do. So wearing this button right here, Bleacher Bum. And that was given to me on Friday after the game. Met up with a friend of mine, Alex Gomez, who is in town from Seattle, used to live in Chicago. So very generous of her. I haven't seen her in the comments yet. I hope she's tuning in. But, very much. Thank you very much to Alex for, meeting up with me and hanging out for a little bit after the game and giving me that button. Truly appreciate that. And other W, another personal one for me, and more of a salute to someone who passed away earlier this year. But shout out to Howie Schwab, Stump the Schwab, one of my favorite shows on ESPN when I was a kid. It's probably the biggest reason why I'm as big of a sports statistic nerd as I am, just from watching that show. So it was like appointment television for me when I was about, 10 or 11, 12 years old. So shout out Howie Schwab, together again up in heaven with Stuart Scott, hopefully hosting the same trivia show.
Awesome. Love it.
Yeah. My L's, I had an L. Oh, well, okay. One of my L's is going to be me from yesterday for tweeting something that, maybe should have had a little more thought. Okay, maybe we'll if you want to know more,
we'll let people go check it.
Yeah, it's still up there, folks. So check it out for yourself. DM me if you really want to see it. Also, another thing I saw, the guys out in the bleachers who painted their bellies to say Shota. First off, Marquis LTU for not interviewing me when I was shirtless out in the bleachers. Andrew, drink again. But moreover that, I found out through
they didn't want to interview that guy.
Yeah, interview this guy. He's a handsome looking guy with a resting bitch face right there on opening day.
Seriously.
So
you mean this guy?
Yep, that guy, exactly. That's the guy you want to have on TV, folks. Oh yeah.
You like how I had that ready at a clicks moment?
Yes, thank you. I'm sure that's like the background on your home screen on your computer.
Oh yeah, I'm telling you, I'm memeing the shit out of that later this year. I'm waiting. I'm giving it some space and time because there are going to be moments where you're going to be like
way over optimistic and yeah.
Yep.
Definitely. But to the guys who painted their bellies to say Shota out in the bleachers, fun fact, if you spell Shota without the line over the O, it means something completely different when translated from Japanese. And I'm not going to say it on here, but go ahead and look that up for yourself and then see what it is with the line. And so L to those guys for advertising something about themselves that may not want to be known. We'll say, and that's all I'll say.
Yeah, and to be fair to our viewers' points, my pops reached out and was like, "Look at these fucking nuts that are out there without their shirts," and I was like, "Yeah, that's my co-host."
That's the guy who I talk intelligent Cubs baseball with. Out there.
Exactly, yeah. The stats nerd that knows like probably, everything that happened like 37 years ago on, in the month of June and can tell you all the win-loss records of like, every month,
Exactly.
Yeah, that guy.
Do you have one of those today on this day? Or?
I don't know. So in lieu of on this day, I figured we get back to our origin, and do the player A, player B. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely something I think we will continue to incorporate. I think it's pretty fun.
For sure.
All right. So I was wrong. I said 15 games straight. It's actually 16 straight games. And that's including 7 road games sandwiched in the middle of it all. So they've got 3 at home against the Astros right now. Then they're going to go on the road against Boston and then to New York to play the Mets. That's a 4-game series. So they have 7 games on the East Coast. Then they come back home for their first divisional series against the Brewers over the weekend of the 3rd and through the 5th of May. And then they'll have 3 more with the Padres before they finally get a day off and then head out east again to face the Pirates and then the Braves. So it's going to be a little bit tough, and they're going to need some starters to go definitely more than the 5 innings or less that they've been averaging, to say the least.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said earlier, getting Steele back soon, and not just him, but, hopefully Tyon continues pitching as well as he did against the Marlins. And if he did, Craig stretches him out a little bit more. So I feel like, this upcoming stretch is where you'll see a lot of the starters go deeper into games, especially if they can keep their pitch counts relatively low.
Okay. So got 3 at home against the Astros, and then you've got 3 on the road against Boston before we reconvene next week.
Yep.
So 6 games. What do you got as the record for this coming week?
Well, I honestly was thinking 2 out of 3 against the Astros going into this, but I was considering tonight to probably be the one that they're going to lose.
Wow. Okay.
I may have to amend that and say that they're just going to sweep the Astros at this point because they look no different than they had through their first 23 games. And again, the Astros, you can't exactly take them lightly. They have been a powerhouse in years past, but I feel like the Cubs are getting them at the right time and getting them at a time when, there's maybe a little bit of a different managerial philosophy. I think they sweep the Astros. They go on the road to Fenway. They take 2 out of 3 there.
Wow. Okay.
5-1.
And Boston's been playing decent baseball, a little bit above 500. So
they got off to a pretty good start, but they cooled off since.
So
they're now 13-10. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good. I think they take 2 out of 3 from this series, and it's just like I think with this team, it's going to take a lot for me to feel comfortable to predict a sweep at any point this year. Until I'm proven that their starters can go deeper than what they've been going. I think once I start to see some of the starting pitching actually go a little bit deeper, we're able to use the pen a little bit less. We can find somebody to get out to the back half, because that's my concern right now is that, one, the starters aren't going deep. So you're pulling guys in earlier innings from your bullpen. And then you're going to have to rely on somebody to get outs at the end of the games. And unfortunately, I think they're going to continue to blow some saves until they figure that out. So I'm going to say they're going to take 2 out of 3 against Houston. They'll take 2 out of 3 against Boston. So I'm going to say 4-2 for this week.
Okay. That's fair. I can see that. And, again, one start against the Marlins isn't anything, necessarily, anything to be all that impressed about with Tyon, but, hopefully he continues that, going forward.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap up here, because, we talked about it a little bit. I think we've talked about it on previous casts, and they're going to play Boston, and I'm like kicking myself because one of my, I think we talked about, like, one of my bucket list things is to visit all the baseball stadiums, in the country before I kick the bucket. And
Same.
I'm probably at about 11 right now, and Boston is like at the top of my list. And we talked about, like, if I had to pick an AL team, it's the Red Sox. I think we, at least me personally, have been able to, like, I've been probably a Boston fan since I'd say 2003-ish. I think, like, when they started having those battles with the Yankees, and especially with 2004, I think 2003 was the start of it, and then 2004 intensified it more. And I think it was because there were so many similarities in those two teams at that time, where long droughts, loyal fan base, but just so used to losing and just
historic ballparks.
Cursed.
Yep.
Yeah, feeling cursed. The 2 oldest ballparks in all of baseball left.
Yep.
And again, fan bases that are just beyond passionate, sycophants, like really just kind of almost sick, right?
And I would throw this out there too, that, we're putting the parallels together, like their big rival being the Yankees, like, our big rival is kind of the Yankees of the National League and the Cardinals, and then even in another sport, their big rival in hockey is the Montreal Canadiens, who are the Yankees of hockey. For a long time, the Hawks' biggest rival was, the Detroit Red Wings, who, are kind of up there as well. So, there's a lot of similarities between, like, the Chicago sports fan and the Boston sports fan experience. I would say we probably pronounce our R's a little bit more than they do, but that notwithstanding, my favorite AL team has always kind of fluctuated from year to year, but there was a decent time where it had been the Red Sox. And like like you hit on with, like, the 03 and 04 stretch, it almost felt like what they were going through, and then finally being able to get over the hump in 04 was like everything we had dreamed about what was happening in 03 with the Cubs actually coming to life for them,
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, in a way, it was like, I wouldn't say jealousy, but it's a team that I always looked at from afar that I wish the Cubs could have, like, strived to be.
Yeah, I mean, we saw, and that was also a team that, like, was kind of like at the beginning of that Moneyball era too, right? Where we kind of started seeing, famously Theo Epstein was interviewed by Oakland.
No, it's the other way around.
Or no, it was Billy Beane was interviewed by
Billy
Boston.
Beane, right. He was almost,
and then
he was
Theo,
the guy that they wanted to hire originally.
Yes,
Correct.
And then Theo ended up going in and being the youngest GM in MLB history at that time.
Yep.
And essentially had very similar philosophies as Billy Beane, and took this team to the World Series and kind of began his illustrious career, and maybe his stake in goatedness, right? Because I mean, you got to say this guy's probably like one of the greatest executives of all time for ending two droughts the way that
like
they did.
The only guy I'd put ahead of him for baseball is probably Branch Rickey from the Dodgers with bringing in Jackie Robinson. Like it's those two, and then a lot of space in between for the next guy.
It's tough, man. Yeah, it's tough. And I would say that, there's so many like parallels between the two organizations. I think before, and then even when Theo came to the Cubs, like, John Lester spent time evenly with both teams. Like his career ERA was basically like the same.
Oh, it was the
same in Boston. It was exactly the same as it was in Boston.
No, I've seen this before. Like his
the same.
His ERA and I think his winning percentage with both franchises is the same.
Yep.
Yeah, 364 career ERA with both franchises, 636 winning percentage with both franchises.
Yep. And then you had both. The guy we talked about, or I talked about at least a little bit. You had David Ross on both those teams as a World Series catcher. So a lot of similarities, a lot of parallels. So Boston always. I mean, I think ever since that point, I think when I saw that, the only team to come down from 3-0 in a series to win in baseball history was.
How could you not have been rooting for them at that? Unless you're a Yankees fan, which we got one in the comments.
I fucking hated the Yankees. even before I enjoyed the Red Sox or started watching Red Sox baseball or really started rooting for them, I just always hated the evil empire. I mean, I can remember back when it was, I want to say, was it the 2001 World Series where I was on pins and needle edge of my seat rooting for the Diamondbacks. I want to say when Luis Gonzalez hit that single to win it against Mariano Rivera. Like I was like, God, I don't think I could have rooted against anyone harder than the Yankees. And not necessarily
first World Series I remember watching too as a young buck. Yeah.
I didn't even care if Arizona won. I just didn't want the Yankees to win. And part of it too, I got to tell you, like growing up, like I don't know if you might be a little bit young for this, but I guess at that point in time, and maybe you remember it, but growing up when I was young preteen, it was Derek Jeter, it was Alex Rodriguez when he was with Seattle, and it was Nomar Garciaparra, who were like the cream of the crop, like the shortstops that just really like were the superstars of baseball. And I couldn't root for Jeter because he was a Yankee. I couldn't root for it wasn't even that I couldn't root for A-Rod. I think I didn't mind A-Rod. I was more of a Griffey fan growing up, but there was
being on the same team. That's
something about Noma,
Noma, exactly.
Noma. I loved it. Like, it's growing up. It's funny, like thinking back, and I still do this, and maybe you still do it, but like, you shoot the garbage in the can and you yell out Kobe.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was always like when I played baseball, it was always like Noma.
That's
thrown across the field. It was just classic, core memory for me there too with the Nomar. So I think it started with that, and then Nomar ended up coming to the Cubs, and I was fucking awesome. It was one of my favorite players growing up.
Yeah, that was like one of my like earliest memories as a Cubs fan too, was like him getting traded here. I remember like just hearing that name and being so excited. Like it was the first time I remember the Cubs ever acquiring a player that like was on that level in the prime of his career.
Yeah.
Didn't exactly work out here, but it was exciting time, down that stretch in 2004, coming off of 2003, thinking that everything was all going to work out until it didn't. But absolutely still, have a very much an affinity and an appreciation for what the Red Sox were in that time for us.
Yeah. But also, let's kick their ass this weekend.
Let's kick their ass this weekend. Well, one more kiss of their ass before kicking their ass.
Okay.
Thank you to them for twice preventing the Cardinals from winning the World Series in both 4 and 13.
That's another great point. Fantastic point. Probably one that is probably the most underrated from my fandom. So kudos to you. Good call out. I'm kicking myself. I didn't think of that, but
Right.
Astros scored. It's 5-1, bottom of the fourth now. Cubs coming up to bat.
Oh, the end of the inning. Okay. Damn, you really are ahead of me. Shoot. Okay.
Yeah.
I did see how they scored there. Alrighty.
All right,
Well,
Mike. Well, yeah. Hopefully next Monday, I think we can. Depending, I don't know if Monday sounds good for you or
Monday works for me if it works for you.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, man. Always great conversation with you. Even though you are the budding optimist of us two.
Hey, it's a yin and a yang.
Yeah, man, you balance me because I would be doom and gloom pretty much all the time if I didn't have you breathing in some hope and positivity. I'd be like, this team's garbage. It's over. Like for every single loss.
Exactly.
So I appreciate it. But all right, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. To another episode of Bums in the Bleacher. We appreciate you. And Mike, any last thoughts?
Go Cubs. Make me look smart. Go 5-1 this week, baby.
All right.
After
Sounds good.
not coming through for me last week. All right.
Go Cubs and let's fly that W. All right. Later, everyone.